Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a look at Transformers Studio Series number 54. This is Voyager-class Megatron from the first Transformers movie. And this guy is an all-new mold. He's done up in this very cool, very shiny silver paint, which is really neat. Really just makes him look like a very premium figure, more so than some of his other incarnations in Studio Series so far. And this just helps round out the original trilogy set of Megatron in his different forms that he took in, first three movies. So if you guys know my channel, you know how this goes. We're gonna take a look at the figure's packaging, we'll see his instructions, then we'll take a look at Megatron himself and in both his vehicle and robot modes. I'll be doing some comparisons and group shots, and then at the end I'll get my final thoughts. So right here you can see he comes in your typical Voyager size Studio Series packaging. Got this nice little render here on the front, though I don't know, something about it makes it look a little more cartoony than it probably should. Especially his hand here. Just looked odd to me. And then front and center you got Megatron himself, and he fills out this package very well. Like, he is not a small Voyager by any means, so that's very cool. Definitely feel like you're getting your money's worth for 30 bucks. Here on the side, you get a closer render of his ugly mug there. Boy, he is an ugly sucker, isn't he? Now on the back, you have the renders of his robot and vehicle modes. Shows that it takes 21 steps to transform him. Describes his backdrop as the Mission City battle, which makes sense because it was the climactic battle of the first movie. And big screen inspired, scale, detail, all that. So we'll see just how big screen inspired he is once we get him out. And of course on this side, just the larger version of this render right here. Also it's flipped apparently for some reason. But yeah, there you go. All right, so here's Megatron's instruction book, and it's actually very small for a Voyager class toy. I was kind of surprised by how tiny this thing was. But, you got his name, number, all that, render of him on the front. Looks like a big old mess of lines and angles, as it should, since that's how this Megatron looks. And you get his transformation from robot to vehicle, which is then continued on the back. Nice and involved. Here's your finished product, and then this shows how to utilize this little whip accessory there. And also you got your cross cell for Mixmaster. And right here it shows you where to store that whip accessory in the vehicle mode. Now here is said vehicle mode, and you can see this thing is very complex looking, all sorts of things going on with it, different parts just strewed about here and there, and honestly you could only ever get away with something that looks like this, in a line that uses the movie aesthetic, in something that's supposed to be some abstract alien craft. Because, if you ever try to pass this off as like a jet plane or something, yikes. But, for what it is, it's very neat looking. I like the double wing effect here. They used to replicate how he looks in the movies, so that's nice. Not a fan of the feet, just kind of sticking up off the top, but, the nose cone looks very nice, and you're going to see the way this transforms is pretty cool. You got these little things which are his forearms that form like the extra little protrusions there in the front. And then his tail fin actually looks quite nice. Holds together well, no issues with that. Undercarriage is pretty much his whole robot torso, so it doesn't look great from the bottom. You can see there's no landing gear of any kind either, so he's really just resting on his chest like that. Which I'm not a fan of because of the paint, which, by the way, this paint looks amazing. And makes some other Megatrons look like garbage in comparison. And then here's that whip accessory that I mentioned. You can store it right there along the side. Of course, if you don't like it, think it's ugly, you can always take it off, make for a cleaner looking vehicle mode. But overall, it accomplishes what it sets out to do, make a somewhat faithful representation of his little spacecraft mode, or at least at this price point, at the scale, the best they can do. Obviously the masterpiece version that just came out recently is going to pull this off a lot better with all the moving parts it has. Now here's the original 2007 Leader class toy. There was a Voyager class one, but I never got that one, so this is the best I could compare it to. And you'll have to forgive me, but as you can see, it's very difficult to fit both of these in frame on this little table. So might be some things kind of cut off the edge there. You can see the overall shape is the same. You know, you got the long wings there that dip down. You got the three, you know, the cockpit with the two little extra bits there, though they're much more pronounced on the old toy. You can see the tail fin, you know, where it's a simple, looks like a jet tail there, is much more bulky and, you know, complex looking on the leader toy. Now, overall, I think this new Voyager has a much better looking vehicle mode. The leader toy just has too much obvious robot kibble. I mean, you got his face right there that he uses this tiny little panel to try to cover, but it's obviously his head. And you got his feet here on the undercarriage of the wings, which I guess is supposed to be some way of representing this little second layer on the wing there, though obviously fails. Now, one thing that this toy has on the new one is that it actually does have landing gear on the bottom. It does have little wheels. It's also starting to flop apart. Doesn't hold together very tightly. But you can see, so at least it can roll and not rest on any painted surface. But overall, I would still say that this thing pulls out the vehicle mode way better. Just looks much more realistic. Looks, you know, both of them have gross inaccuracies to the actual CGI model, but this one just gets the overall look down a lot better, I think. But perhaps you disagree. Right now for our transformation robot mode, if you haven't already, go ahead and remove his weapon. Now, take his little feet and these like back parts here, lift them up, untab them off the chest. And then you're going to remove them from the back, so you're kind of lifting them up and away. Make sure these come apart. Let's fold these down like so. So you got them all kind of splayed out here. And now these wings, you're gonna detach this little like support piece from the wingtip. You're gonna fold it over that way, fold it back, and there, now it's nice and out of the way. Rotate this whole bit all the way till it tabs onto the side of the leg there. Going to fold that wingtip in. Fold everything up into like this little bundle and fold it all up inside the leg like so. Then bring these over, and they have a little tab right here. You can see that? It goes right in this little slot. You just press them in together. Try to get them to stay. There's that. So we'll do the same thing here. Try not to pop this piece off if you can help it. It does like to pop off. Pull everything up. Rotate this all the way up. Collapse this down. Pull all the way in. Try not to scratch paint if you can help it. Bring this over. Connect. Doesn't really like to stay put, unfortunately. All right. So, got the legs assembled. They're pretty boxy looking. Kind of folds up in a way similar to the Dark of the Moon Megatron. Just becomes a big box for his calves there. All right, now we're gonna separate his torso out. So fold this down. Move his arms out of the way. And we're going to lift his head up and out. Fold these shoulder panels out. Bring the outer panels up until they kind of just lock into place there on those tabs. You can see that. All right, turn his head around, get that out of the way. Now, this is the cool part. This is what I like. To collapse his nose cone, it curls up to the side like that, which, to my memory, I don't recall seeing any toys that have really done that. You have a part curl up in one direction. Normally they're symmetrical. Like normally this would split in half and fold back, but no. They opted for something very different this time around, and I think it's really cool that they did that. So go ahead, push it back in, make sure everything lines up so that it goes in. Make sure the back tabs onto the shoulder panels. Like so. There you go, got his head nice and lined up. And then lastly, just go ahead and unfold his hands. And here we go. This is Megatron in his robot mode, in all of his spiky silver glory. And he looks pretty well put together in this mode. Now in this mode, Megatron is pretty well articulated. His head is on a ball joint, though because of the way it naturally sits, it mostly just kind of turns this way. Can't get a lot of natural turn out of it. You can always raise this like hinge bit up a bit, like so. But then it kind of gives him this weird long neck syndrome. Makes him look kind of odd, but it is an option. You can go for that if you want to increase that posability. The shoulders are on a hinge and swivel, and the hinge for the shoulder is actually pretty tight. You gotta put a fair bit of force on there to get him to go, which is not the best thing, but it's better than them being loose. He has bicep swivel, single bend elbows. His hands don't articulate, they're molded solid, so that's a shame. No waist swivel because of the way he transforms, but he does have hinge and swivel on the hips, which allows him to go back and forth, you know, in and out. Thigh swivel here, single bend knees, and then he does rock ankle tilt. Let's see that. And then his toes can even move around a little bit, though there is a solid piece underneath to actually have him stand. Toes aren't really what hold him up in the front. And, you know, that's as far as he goes for articulation. Now, because of his big old calves, you can't rotate his legs outward too far because they hit each other. But, you know, gotta sacrifice a little bit to make the design work, right? Speaking of the calves, it's probably the worst looking part of the robot mode because you just see everything kind of stuffed inside of there. And it's maybe the biggest eyesore because other than that, all of his kibble, you know, goes away and cleans up very, very well. So he kind of, again, suffers the same fate as the Dark of the Moon Megatron, where he just gets these big old bulky kibble calves just to hide everything. And then, like I said, on my copy, this one tab doesn't like to stay in. It really fights you. The other one's fine. The other one stays. Not a huge deal because it all stays together pretty well anyway. You know, it doesn't tab right. But yeah, that's gist of the overall robot mode. Now his whip accessory. It's kind of interesting. It's mostly a solid piece, though the head of it does actually articulate. It is on a swivel here, so it can turn. So, yeah, it's pretty neat. Get a little more posability out of it. And the way it works for this robot mode, you fold away one of his fists. Could be either one. And you take this like tab thing, stick in the slot behind his wrist, and you just push it in all the way. And he gets to use his whip. Now again, this part doesn't articulate, so it just sticks straight out. Not the most pose friendly or display friendly design, because it's really out there. But, you know, it does enable you to enact some pretty cool scenes. Now, as far as storage for this thing, the instructions don't call out any storage options. The only thing I've found that even comes close is these tabs right here on his back. The head of the whip does have recesses, specifically these ones right here toward the top, that do more or less fit on the tabs. So you can go and press them on, and they'll stay put for the most part. Hangs pretty low, just kind of goes across his back, and, you know, obviously inhibits his leg articulation a little bit because he can't swing his legs back. But so far, that's the only real option I've found for storage. I don't know if that's intended or not, or if I'm just fan moding it, but it is an option if you don't want his whip just out there. You just kind of stick it on his back. All right, and here's the 2007 leader class again for comparison. And, if you thought their vehicle modes were different, their robot modes look absolutely nothing alike. I mean, aside from just the fact that they're pointy and kibbly and have a big old ugly face that only a mother could love, I mean, they're night and day. And this toy, the new one, is obviously much more movie accurate than the old one. Just between the coloration, the placement of certain parts and kibble, things like that, the new toy wins hands down. Plus, the leader class toy, just as a figure, is very lacking when it comes to posability and features that other toys of its time had. I mean, the 2007 movie Optimus was leagues better of a figure than this one. So people have always felt that the movie one Megatron design really never got the love it deserved, and I think they're right. I think we compare it to any other movie Megatron toys, whether it's the leader or the Voyager, they've always been very lacking for this specific design. And then recently, you had the Masterpiece, which admittedly is probably better than this toy, but if you don't want to drop, $160 or more, you can pick this guy up for $30, and he does a really good job of matching up to, what you imagine the Megatron design from the first movie to look like. So as much as I hate to sound, mean and just rag on this toy a whole lot, it's very lacking when you compare it to, what we can do now with that design. Now here, we finally have the big group shot of the Studio Series Megatrons for the first 3 movies. And you can see I've added the Last Night Voyager Megatron figure, because personally I always viewed the Last Night toy line, specifically the new mold toys, not just the redecos, but the new mold toys, to be sort of a proto Studio Series. I think they were testing out some things and really trying to up the ante. So a lot of them, are comparable to Studio Series figures in a lot of ways, as far as the articulation, detailing, complexity of the transformations, screen accuracy. Maybe a little lacking in paint. This guy could do well with a premium paint job to spruce him up, but overall the design's solid. And I think it shows because a lot of the Last Night toys have been redecoed and retooled into Studio Series. I mean, some of them just get that nice flashy coat of paint and get re-released. So for all intents and purposes, he's considered part of the Studio Series. Unless, of course, they go and make a newer version. But yeah, you can see, how the designs have changed pretty radically over the years. And one thing that this guy unfortunately does, by being so amazing looking, is he makes the original Revenge of the Fallen toy, or, Studio Series Revenge of the Fallen, look kind of like garbage. I mean, this guy's very lacking in paint compared to him and even the Target exclusive retool there. And it makes him a real eyesore in a group shot that has very solid paint jobs otherwise. I mean, this guy's coloration is very different, but it's supposed to be. He has a new alt mode now, I know he's got this old rusty hobo look going on, hobo with a shotgun, right? So while they are really excellent, it does kind of leave you clamoring for like a premium edition of the first Megatron that they released in Studio Series, just to put him on the level of these two. Or, if you're a more picky collector, you could just skip this guy altogether and just get the battle damage version, because he looks pretty much like he's supposed to. Alright, now as for my final thoughts on this toy, fully recommend him. He is utterly fantastic, and I think he really highlights just how far we've come, not just from previous toy lines, but just within Studio Series itself. When it started out, things were pretty good, but a lot of molds and paint jobs and stuff left a lot to be desired, and you can see how they're really upping the ante now. Which is good, because the general sentiment for the Transformers brand as a whole is they're cutting back on a lot of things, whether it comes to the size of the figures, the paint, all that. And it's not always the case, but it's not a criticism without warrant either. This guy is a nice buck against that trend, where he's much, much better than the first Megatron we got in Studio Series. He's much less hollow, he's much prettier to look at. I mean, just when painted the whole figure, pretty much. And he's just got a very competent transformation. Again, I love the whole nose cone just kind of curling up inside of his back. Never seen anything like that before, except maybe in like Beast Wars, where they had a lot of little dangly bits that had to go somewhere. But I think, you know, this is something that I feel really is a $30 toy. It's a great looking robot mode. He has a vehicle mode that, well, I think just the design itself is silly, is a really great interpretation of, you know, the movie model. Some small criticisms. I do wish his head had a little better articulation without you having to pop it up and give him like a weird giraffe neck. And, you know, as far as that tolerance issue on my copy's leg, I hope that's not a widespread thing, that most copies do, you know, hold together much better. But yeah, I think you should definitely pick this guy up if you see him in stores. I did actually just see one on a Walmart shelf yesterday. I was kind of surprised. And he's shipping alongside his Wavemate Mixmaster, who is also a very solid toy that I will be reviewing here after this one. But yeah, you know, my final verdict is pick him up. You won't be disappointed. I think this will be your favorite Megatron that you will get at a Studio Series until maybe they one-up this later. But of course, this is all just my opinion. I'd like to know what you all think of this new Megatron. Am I hyping him up too much, or is he deserving of all this praise? Is he your ultimate 2007 Megatron? I'd love to know what you think in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a thumbs up. Let YouTube know that you do like these. If you want to see more reviews like this or any of my other videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at quite possibly the best interpretation of this design we've ever had at a regular retail level. And with all that said, I will see you next time.